Hey, welcome to the Do Good Work podcast. Today we have Dennis Kelly on the show. Dennis is the CEO of Postalytics, is a fast-growing direct mail automation software company, and it helps marketers do more in less time with streamlined production, integration in the marketing stack, and real-time direct mail campaign analytics. Postalytics is Dennis's sixth startup, and he's been involved in starting and growing early-stage technology ventures for over 30 years. And he's on a mission to reestablish direct mail marketing as a go-to marketing channel for modern, digital-first marketers.
Excellent. Well, Dennis, thanks for being on, man.
Thank you for having me, Raul. Very excited to be here.
So, Dennis, I'm pretty familiar with a lot of these softwares online and all the opportunities that are out there. And I think a lot of digital natives, digital founders, digital first marketers are very gun ho on focusing on what we can leverage digitally, like adding value digitally, but you're bringing that to the physical space. And I find that pretty exciting. Can you tell me a little bit more about how or why you decided to niche down specifically in direct mail?
Yeah, sure. Postalytics story is interesting and has had some twists and turns. Essentially, back in 2013, I was approached by a friend of mine who I worked with in a couple of previous startups, who's an engineer. And this guy, who's now our chief technology officer, my partner in the business, had a business he was running, and he wanted to reach out to a very defined audience to try to get an event scheduled or promote an event he was participating in. And he said, I'll send out a postcard campaign. So he did that. And then as an engineer, he thought, I want to drive them to a landing page so I can measure results. And so he started building a landing page. And then he realized, you know what? There's a lot of personalization based on the data that I have that I could use to make the landing page better. And so he said, there must be a tool or something I could use to sort of bridge this gap between the physical space and the web. And he went out and searched, and there were some tools, but they're expensive and clunky. Classic engineer, didn't like anything, so he needed to build it. So he built this tool that could be used in a direct mail campaign to drive people online and then measure, what they're doing once they get online. And he showed it to me, and he had a couple customers, and I thought, hey, this is interesting because while the whole world is moving toward digital, direct mail is this kind of big industry out there, about $40 billion a year spent in the US. And nobody's paying much attention to it, which sounded a lot like an opportunity. And we put our heads together and thought, hey, we can build something around this, take it to the direct mail industry and say, hey, here's a way for you guys to participate in the digital growth out there and make your product relevant and useful for an audience that really wants to drive people online. And so we built a tool, we called it BoingNet, had email marketing, it had all this stuff around these direct mail campaigns. Took it out to the market to sell to, I guess what I call today, the legacy direct mail world. And it was a flop.
Interesting. Oh my God. Was it because you were doing too much at once? Because I know you were pretty much, it's almost like the modern day CRM automation with social, direct, website, email triggers. Was it because of that, or was it product market fit, or?
It was a market that just did not envision technology as the solution to their problems. And so we were able to sell it, and we were doing okay with it, but it became a very services heavy project, and the sales cycles were long. After you've done startups for a while, you feel, when your product and your market, kind of product market fit concept, are the right thing. And while we think we built a great product, the market just didn't love it. You just feel it. It was too hard to sell this stuff. We were very frustrated, and we thought, built all this software. What can we do to break out of this? And then at around that time, we had some customers come to us and say, hey, guys, you're living in this world between digital and direct mail. We've just invested in Salesforce, and we've got all this email marketing and automation set up. Our open rates are declining. We'd love to try to tie direct mail into what we're doing in email marketing, digital marketing, but it's so painful to do. You guys are kind of there. Can you help us? We heard from a few customers, and then started talking to some other folks, and we realized, you know what? There's this huge audience of marketers out there that have invested in all this infrastructure around CRM and marketing automation tools that are dealing with a couple of dynamics. First, email response and open rates have been on a steady decline
Yeah.
as the number of emails that we receive every day has been increasing. So the value of every email message you send is declining, in a long-term decline. And then secondly, the cost of customer acquisition through digital channels has spiked.
It's all, yeah, that's a huge factor.
But you're a marketer, you've got a channel that's working in digital, but it's getting more and more expensive every day. You've got this other channel that's been great. It's been your workhorse, but it's in this long-term decline. What are you going to do? And so direct mail has this sort of reverse thing going on from email. So mail volume in the US has been on a steady decline
Interesting.
since 2008. It's been, people are getting their bills through the mail. They're not sending letters and postcards and all this kind of stuff. So the direct mail pieces that go to your mailbox are making a bigger impact because there's less clutter. There's less stuff there. You're not overwhelmed by it. And so what's happened, and I was just looking at the National Analytics Association response rate survey from last year. Response rates of direct mail have been increasing.
Interesting. And do you know what demographics are being hit the most with direct mail for the response rates to go through?
Right.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
That's like the no brainer. There's a little dip with Gen X. But what we're seeing incredibly is that millennials and Gen Z even are
Yeah.
starting to say, hey, what is this? I've never seen one of these things.
It's like the novelty of it, right? Because of the, have you seen some of the trends? Because, and I want to dive back on a few points that you made earlier, email and CAC, cost per acquisition. Have you seen a trend like with what's been going on with pandemic and the huge spike and surge? There's been some studies from like anthropologists who study different civilizations, and when like different illnesses come through a civilization, there's usually a trend of more social outings. Do you feel like because of this, we're desiring more of physical, like not just in-person events, travel, et cetera, but even just like the nuance of getting a letter in the mail from someone as opposed to getting an email or a text message?
There's no question. There's no question. As a matter of fact, Canada Post did a study around the neuropsychology associated with the actual touch, the physical touch of a marketing message. And what they found was that the same message delivered on a screen versus something that is held in your hand, the physical piece or whatever it is, could be mail or brochure or whatever, has a 70% higher brand recall.
Wow. Interesting.
And you have a tactile experience. You're handling this thing for a longer period of time than you are typically any kind of digital.
Yeah.
It's just at a base layer, right? There's a role for physical media in the overall marketing mix because of that very reason. Now, compounding that, we're stuck at home, we're quarantined. I got a trip I go outside, I go to my mailbox, I bring something in. It's like breaking up my day. It's doing something different. And so there's a feeling of comfort and enjoyment in that routine.
Yeah.
It's a sense of normalcy. And there's some communication going on. And I can look at a postcard. It's got some aspirational image that makes a mark on my brain.
Yeah.
And I think you're right that what we saw when the pandemic first hit, about half of our customer base are B2B companies. They sell to other businesses.
Mhm.
They stopped mailing immediately. They were like, no one's in the office. Why am I going to send mail to an office that is empty? So we took a hit, but then the consumer side of the business just took off.
Yeah.
And now we're 70-30 split between consumer B2B because of the pandemic.
Yeah. How's that switch happening too? I know there's some companies that are going like direct home office, only work from home, and then others that are some doing a flex days. How has it affected the B2B side for direct mail?
So there's certain industries that has an impact. There are critical industries for people that have left the office. So those companies are doing the same thing that happened.
Yeah.
Other companies are now struggling because they're getting the message across to this distributed workforce, this mobile workforce where people are in lots of different places. It's really the kind of the data side of the industry is trying a lot of stuff right now to
Mhm.
try to be able to enable business to say, Raul is here, right? This is where he's spending a lot of his time from a work perspective. And so the physical place where that is, if it can be identified to an address, then it can be mailed to. But we're really not there yet. There's a lot of experimentation and people are trying a lot of different techniques, but I haven't heard anybody stand up and say, hey, I got it. I've figured this kind of work from home thing out from an addressing perspective.
Yeah, that's a little difficult. I think depending on the business size, like if it's an enterprise, like that'll be a little harder cookie to crack. But if it's like a small business, in my opinion, like the 5 to 20 people, you could probably find the founders or the C-suites addresses just by doing a reverse business search up. Let's talk some strategy because you piqued my interest on, you hit some of the bigger issues like email opens, or if you do email wrong, yeah, your emails are going to go down. I think that when it comes to some of the installments from Apple, and then I'm not sure if Google's going to impact in the next year in summer, but they're getting rid of cookies. But with the email issue, I think that is just making sure that you provide relevant and value added content. So we'll talk about that being how do you make direct mail delightful? Then the second is on customer acquisition cost. In regards to that will always be increasing. But I think I don't want to make it a logical fallacy because I do know that there are ways just with better offers, better targeting, better segmenting, better fresh creatives, you can lower that. Like I'm seeing that in real time. But I do a direct mail component because of what you just mentioned on that brand recall that I remember I brought a book. I won't promote the marketer. He's a really good marketer, but he also sent a direct mail piece. I'm like, oh, it was pretty insightful to see how he's using that specifically to get people into a program. And I really appreciate it because no one else has done that. So I'm curious to know, are you seeing direct mail mostly on remarketing campaigns for warmer audiences, for those who are already in my network, in my ecosphere, purchased a low ticket product? Or is it best for you to see direct mail for when you're doing your direct outreach, cold outreach? What are you seeing here? What's a healthy balance to look at with
Sure.
direct mail?
Sure. So there's a couple of things there. I'll take a step back. Just going back to Postalytics for a moment. When we decided to change course, we stuck a fork, the first product, took a year, had to make some very difficult decisions, lay some people off that were great employees, great people. And we decided to focus on three aspects of traditional direct mail experience that we felt were lacking from a marketer's perspective. The first, speed and complexity of the workflow to
Mhm.
just create a campaign and get it out. Number
Yep.
one. Number two is integration with the marketing tech stack that
Yeah.
everybody is investing in. And then number three are analytics, right? Tracking what's being sent, what's being delivered, who's responding, stuff that you are accustomed to getting through digital marketing and email. So we built a software tool to solve those problems.
I love it.
And what we have found is the history of direct mail has been primarily used as a lead acquisition tool. So for the majority of direct mail's existence, it has been used and sent in large quantities, like big bulk batch processes where you're going to send to 10,000, 50,000, 200,000 people. And the reason why is because the traditional process of setting up a relatively sophisticated direct mail campaign with personalization, it's a lot of work.
Mhm.
And so there's a lot of fixed costs associated with that. There's this process by which a printer has to go through where each campaign is a custom one-off, where a bunch of humans have to get together. They have to work with a sophisticated software that maps personalization variables into Adobe products, do all this setup. A lot of work goes into the creation of a direct mail campaign. So the fixed cost of that setup is best spread out over large numbers. And so therefore, marketers are thinking, because of the cost factor, they think, all right, this is going to take a long time for me to do.
Yep.
It's complex. It's a lot of steps. It's expensive. So I'm only going to use this to hit broad audiences, to try to get awareness out there, try to drive activity off of cold leads.
Yeah.
Enter marketing automation and CRM, where now you've got sales funnels that are being tracked and you've got these automation workflows.
Existing already to make sure that it's like real time nurture depending on the goals.
So let's say, for example, you're an existing customer, you're in a funnel, you're post sale loyalty campaign. You're not opening emails. So in the marketing automation tool, they say, okay, if Raul doesn't open 5 emails in a row, we're going to drop him into a direct mail workflow, and we're going to drip 3 postcards and 2 letters out over the next 3 months, and try to drive him back online and re-engage.
Interesting. Okay.
And so what we're providing is a vehicle to, yes, you can send 10,000 or 50,000 or 100,000 pieces out in a big batch effort by going click, send or schedule.
Yeah.
Right? You can do that. But even more powerfully, we're able to complement all of the automation infrastructure that you're creating with individual mail pieces going to specific people at specific points in time as a part of a multi-channel strategy.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. And I think going to the first question, like, how do you make it delightful, like just in time? Because I mean, I could direct mail and some of it's just like it's irrelevant or like just bought my name and address from some place that I don't even know who they're from. And some of it is distasteful, but then there's others where it's, oh, there's tools where you can have direct mail, and then there's like an automate, like a machine that actually does handwritten things at scale. So it looks like it's handwritten, so it looks like it's unique and special to me. So you can't tell the difference because they use real ink. So how do you balance that automation with a delightful experience?
Sure. What we see across our customers are a couple of different approaches. It's very much audience driven. And one of the benefits of creating an automated workflow and consolidating a lot of the complexity in these steps is that
Mhm.
marketers can spend more time testing and trying different approaches to reaching their specific audiences than just project managing this thing with lots of moving parts. So the 2 things that sort of bubble up in our customers are large, powerful imagery that is personalized, big postcard with great design and some sort of image that has been thoughtfully prepared to speak to you,
So
right?
relevant to where I am in the stage or the customer journey.
Exactly. Or the other thing that seems to be working very well are letters
Yeah.
that, have some sort of combination of nice design on the exterior, right? Something that hates something of value that doesn't look like every other letter that you're getting.
Yeah.
And then, using the real estate of an 8.5 by 11 sheet of paper or sheets of paper to present a more complex and nuanced set of messages to reach somebody.
Yeah.
And so those are the 2 techniques we're seeing the most of in our customer base that are driving the highest response rates.
No, I love that. And it goes back to just classic, almost direct response in a way, just making sure that we are relevant to the customer journey and make a clear call to action and make sure that we measure that call to action and seeing how that drives engagement. And ideally, I think with the mindset of creating community, not just for getting that person to take action, but getting that person to take action and be part of something larger because of this piece of direct mail.
I'd love to add one more comment,
Yeah.
before we move on off and relating back to the pandemic. The acceptance of QR codes has been a steady increase, right?
Yeah, I think a
Everyone's-
huge rebound. Like I thought they were dead and then they came
Yeah.
back to life.
Yeah. A couple things happened about 4 or 5 years ago. Apple and Google decided to start bundling QR readers in the native cameras
Yep. Yeah.
of phones. So that started trickling into the population. And then the pandemic hit, and everywhere you went, you didn't want to touch anything.
Mm.
So everybody's using QR codes now to do everything. I just went to a conference, and as I walked around the trade show floor, every booth had a great big QR code for
Yeah.
their giveaways and their contests. And so what we're seeing is this massive spike of QR codes as the response tool
Yep.
in direct mail. And so that's been very much driven by the pandemic.
That's interesting. It's an interesting strategy. So I think just to tie it back to how do we look at direct mail in the bigger piece of your revenue operations, growth marketing, or depending if you're small, mid, or enterprise. I think it's just looking at always classically the customer journey and how are you measuring that? How does that tie back to the actual sales funnel and how do you actually nurture that customer journey? And through that, identifying when is the best touch point to send a physical piece of mail. If you're going to do it at the front with top of funnel audiences who are more cold and need more warming up, or if you're going to do this for re-engagement, or if this is for special promotions like events or like a new product that you have coming out and you just want to have a feel, that touch that's exclusive. And that creates, ideally, that creates kind of like FOMO or I'm special. And then also, I'm only sending this to 100 people. You're one of those 100. It also creates exclusivity. And I think that's important to look at when you're looking at the customer journey. I think for this, Dennis, for our audience out there, what's the best place for people to go? One, reach out to you and thank you for this podcast episode, but two, learn more about what you're up to.
Sure thing. Our website at postalytics.com, postalytics.com is where the majority of our communication and offering is located. As a matter of fact, we have a free forever product. You can sign up and use Postalytics and not pay for anything until you actually send some mail. There's all sorts of, so it's a product-led growth concept and then very much usage-based pricing. So that's probably the best place to go. You can hit me at dennis@postalytics.com on email. And then on LinkedIn, I'm very active on LinkedIn as well. Thank you so much, Raul, for spending some time talking with me today. It was really a pleasure. And I hope that the audience enjoys the episode.
So this is really cool. Appreciate you, Dennis.
My pleasure. Thank you.
If you found value in today's podcast, please consider sharing this with someone that you believe could also benefit from this episode. You never know, you may be the catalyst that opens them up to a new way of operating their business and experiencing life. As always, it's an honor to be a small part of your journey. This is Raul Hernandez. Do good work.